Okay, so we're going to talk about factoring polynomials. And these are some examples here on how to factor. So let's start with the first one. It says factor the GCF. The GCF is the greatest common factor. So when it comes to the letters, you always factor out you're going to factor out the letter with the smallest power that all the terms share. That's important. They have to all have it. Like if you look at this example, they all have x. Okay, so then I can factor in x. And you're going to look at the x with the smallest power. That's 2. Okay, so now the numbers. Some of you will see them and you know what you're supposed to factor out. I am not talking to those people. If you know how to factor out, do it. I am going to do it a little bit of a longer way because if you struggle, this is the perfect way to do it. You're going to take each of the numbers and then you're going to see, well, the 5, you cannot break it up anymore. We're going to break it up into prime factors, like the 10 would be 5 and 2. The 25 would be 5 and 5. And then what you do is you're going to look at all the numbers that you found and see which numbers they share. Let's find the numbers that they all have in common. So they all have in common a 5. So that 5 comes out. See? Okay, now I'm going to set up the parentheses. And with the letters, let's start with the numbers. With the numbers, we took out the 5. So what you're thinking of taking out the 5 is basically ignore the 5 because you took it out. And then the leftovers. On the first one, there's no leftovers, so it's like a 1. And then the letters, subtract them. 5 minus 2, 3. Now I'm going to go to the next number. See, we took out the 5, so I'm not going to put that one, but I'm going to put the leftover, which was the 2. And then 3 minus 2 is x to the 1. And then the last one, I'm left with a 25, a 5, and they both have an x squared, so I don't have to put anything. Now, of course, if you want to make it neater, you don't have to put the 1 there, and you don't have to put the 1 with the x. Like that. So then the leftover numbers here are the ones that go inside the parentheses, and the one I took out, the one that they all share is the one I put outside. So here we have another one. Let's look at the numbers. 49, 56, 35. So 49 is 7 and 7. 56 8 and 7, but I can keep breaking the 8, so I'm going to keep doing it. It's going to be 4 and 2, 2 and 2. So I have 2, 2, 2, and 7. And then 35 is 7 and 5. So now what I'm going to look for is a number they all share. So in this case, it would be they all share a 7. So that's what's going to go outside. Now, when it comes to the letters, they all have Y. So we're going to take out the smallest one, which is Y6. And now we're going to go to the inside. So on 49, what do I have left? The 7. So I'm going to put 7. And then for the letters, 20 minus 6, 14. Plus, when I go to 56, I have all of these numbers left, so you multiply them and you get 8. So that's what I put here, 8. And then the y would be 12 minus 6, that's 6, plus, and then you look at the 35, there's a 5, and the y2 is 6. Like that. This one is a trinomial, so how we're going to factor these ones out is you're going to multiply the first and the last, because in this case there's nothing there, so just the 63. So what we're looking for is numbers that multiply to 63. So that's going to be 1, 63. 2 doesn't work. 3 works. 3 and 21. 4 is not going to work. 5 doesn't work. 6 doesn't work. 7 works. 8 doesn't work. 9 we already have. 10 doesn't work. 11 doesn't work. I think that's it. And then, of course, yeah, 160. And now, they need, now that you have the numbers that give you 63, they need to add to negative 16. So if you want them to multiply to a positive but add to a negative, they all have to be negative. So then which of these, when I add them, give me negative 16? This one gives me negative 64, negative 24, 16. So they're these numbers, the ones I'm going to use. And then I set up the parentheses and just put my numbers. X minus 7, x minus 9. And I know what most of you, if you don't know how to factor before this, most of you are thinking, I don't know, miss. This just looks too weird. Well, lucky for you, you already know the quadratic formula, don't you? Don't you? So you do. So then what we can do is this. Let me show you how you can avoid this. If you want, you can do the following. Do the quadratic formula. So it would be A equals 1, B equals negative 16, and C equals to 63. Then I plug them in the formula. Basically get the answers. You're going to get 7 and 9. Of course, those are not the answers because you need to factor, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to just take them. What happens is these answers are the opposite, or basically it says x equals. What you want to do is the parentheses. So what I'm going to do to the answers is basically take them back. So when you take the positive 7 back, you're going to do x minus 7. When I take this one back, you get x minus 9. And then that's how you get the answer. Put them together. X minus 7, x minus 9. And then this way you avoid the factoring if that's something you struggle with. You can do it with the quadratic because we already went over it in the other class, and get the answers like that. So like, for example, with this one, if I do just the regular factoring, I want them to multiply to -8, and I want them to add to -2. So numbers that give me 8 is 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and that's it. Now if I want two negatives, then the biggest number has to be negative. And then I'm going to check which one gives me -2. So that's this one. So my parentheses would be x plus 2, x minus 4. And it seems pretty simple and short, but only if you know how to do it. So if you don't know how to do it, you basically get the quadratic formula, which you even have in your formula sheets and you can keep using even for these things. Then you plug it in. And what you're going to get from the quadratic formula is -2 and 4. So if I want the answers, what I need to do is take them back. So it's going to be x plus 2, basically changing the sign, x minus 4. So then your answer is just putting them together. X plus 2, x minus 4. And you have factored the polynomial without really knowing how to factor. Because I don't call, this is not factoring, this is solving an equation. So it has nothing to do with this. But it's a way to go around factoring if you have problems with it. And since we have so many things in this class, this is a way to get that done without the actual factoring process. It works for any of them. Like this one, if I wanted to do by regular factor, remember you do multiply the first and the last. So it would be 3 times 12. So that would be 36. So I need them to multiply to 36. And I need them to add to 13. So it would be 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. So then when you add them, we need to see which one gives you the number you need. Now this is everything's positive, so that's why I'm not worrying about the signs. So it looks like that. And the one that gives me 13 would be these guys. Now, because you do have something in front of the 3, you have to do it a little different. You're going to have to put the number that you see here. And then plus 4. And you're going to have to put that number with both parentheses. Like that. And then we simplify. So this 3, you divide these by 3. And you're left with, you simplify each parenthesis individually. And this is what you get. Now, if you were to do it with a quadratic, you would do a equals 3, b equals 13, c equals 12. So x equals -13, like that. So if you put it in the quadratic, you're going to get -4/3, and you're going to get -3. So when it's time to take them back, this one comes over here, so you get x plus 4/3, and this one is x plus 3. Now, this doesn't look like the parentheses I have here. The only difference, every time you have a fraction like this, what you're going to do, you're going to take that number in the bottom and put it next to the x. See? Now, what you have to pay attention to is the direction. Like here it says factor, so you have to give the answers like this. When it says solve, you have to give the answers like this. So do notice the difference. Factor, you give them with parentheses. Solving is this what we did here. So I wouldn't try both methods. Like I said, I would pick one and then stick with that one. So if you think the quadratic formula is working for you, it's fine. If you feel like, you know what, I may need another math class, I do need to learn how to factor, then this may be worth your while, the factoring process. But if you feel like, I just want to get through this class, I need this to get done, and I need a way to know how to factor, then this works all the time with every time they're trying to factor trinomials. What I'm saying is if you're going to take pre-calculus, if you're going to take another math class, you may need to know the process. So it may be worth spending your time learning it. So keep that in mind. Okay, this one, 15. I'm going to multiply the 15 and the negative 2, and I get negative 30. So 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4 no, 5 and 6. And they need to add to negative 1. Two negatives means the negative is the bigger number. So that would be negative 29, negative 13, negative 7, negative 1. I need a negative 1, so that's going to be this one. Now, when you set up the parentheses, make sure you put the 15 with both. 15W, 15W, and then plus 5 minus 6. But that's not the answer yet. You have to simplify. So you look at this parentheses, and I can divide both of these by 5. And these parentheses, I can divide both of these by 3. So I get 3W plus 5. And here I get 5W minus 2. And that is going to be the answer. Now, if you're going to do it with the quadratic, and I'm doing both here to give you options on how to do it. So the quadratic will give you x equals negative 5/3 and x equals 2/5. So when it's time to get them backwards, it will be x plus 5/3, x minus 2/5. And then you're going to get the number in the bottom and put it in the front. Like that. This one is 4 terms. When it comes to 4 terms, what you're going to do is you're going to group them. I'm going to group the first 2 and I'm going to group this 2. And I'm going to look at this. What is the greatest common factor there? Well, they both have a y, so I can take out the smallest power. And remember, we do subtract. So when I subtract with the 3, I get 1y. And then here, I just get a 7. And then over here, remember, this is 7 times 7. So we do have a 7 in common. And when I take that out, I'm left with y. And then on this one, I'm left with a 7. The goal of these is that this is the same as this. Because if it is the same, then you write it once. And then the other parentheses is going to have what you have outside the parentheses. And that is the factor. Now, if you look at this one here, for example, this one already has the parentheses the same. So you're going to write them once. And then your other parentheses are going to have what's outside. Now here's another trinomial. When you have three terms, you can do it with a quadratic or with the factoring. So this is a good place to stop. Put pause to the video, work it out on your own, and then come back and see if you got the right answer. Work it out your own way. I'm going to work it out both ways here, but I will work it out one way, just your way. So let's say your way is factoring. So let's do that first, and then we'll go with quadratic. They have to multiply to 16. So 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 3, 4 and 4. And they need to add to 8. 17, that's 10. So since there's nothing in front of the z, it would just be c plus 4. When you have two of the same, you can also write it like this. Either or should be okay. Now, if you decided to use quadratic, a was 1, b was 8, c was 16. Now, when you did the quadratic, you should have gone only one answer, -4. Like, if you put both of them, you should got the same answer. So that would be just x plus 4 twice, or x plus 4 to the second power. This is one you can do the same way. If you're doing it by factoring, they would need to add up to 0. So they would multiply to 64, and they need to add to 0. Now, because I want this one to be negative and just 0, one of them has to be negative. And then you see that it's going to be the 8 and 8. Now, this one, it's a difference of squares. And a shortcut to this would be, if you look, if it has a minus. If it has a minus, then look at the number and say, what's the square root of 64? 8. And that's how you can get a shorter way without having to do all the work. Now, if you can get the square, if you have a minus and you can get the square root, meaning there's nothing in the middle. Now, if you do it with the quadratic, your a would be 1, your b would be 0, and your c would be -64, and it would still work. I keep putting or because I don't want you to do both. Just do the one that works best for you. So when you take them back, it would be x plus 8. Should I put in the right order? Doesn't matter which one you put first, as long as you have them both. So I hope this helps when you're trying to factor, not only for this section, but in later sections where they ask us to factor in the other class as well. Let me know if you have any questions.